who didn't even finish high school, didn't have money to go to university, but built himself a telescope. And he actually took and ground the glass to become the lenses of his telescope and built it and started observing the universe, and then wrote a letter to Lowell of the Lowell Observatory, and because of his self-taught skills got hired on. He's the guy looking at photographic plate after photographic plate and comparing them, who noticed this tiny little light that changed on one of his photographic plates, and that's how he discovered Pluto. And to, in his lifetime, seen all of the development, and then after his death, to have his just an ounce of his ashes put on board that spaceship that just went by Pluto. Well, I mean, it's an amazing human story and sequence of events, and it's going to take months to get all of the data sent back from New Horizons, but we should be seeing the initial pictures here in the next day or two, and we'll learn more about Pluto in the next week than we have known about Pluto in the last 4.5 billion years. It's pretty incredible. I think if you ask any guitar, I mean, I've been playing guitar my whole life, and I was the front man in bands for a bunch of years, 25 years. But if you ask any guitar player on earth to stand on their head and play guitar, they mess it up, because the guitar won't stay in place, and the weight on your arm, you're used to having gravity push down on your hand and arm, and so when you move your hand up and down the neck, you have the right muscle memory. Well, if you try and play guitar standing on your head, your arm will be on the wrong spot, and the guitar will be, and you'll mess up. You'll do a terrible job of playing guitar. It's sort of like that. And you have to relearn how to play. And also your arm, the inertia is the same, but the weight is different, so you miss the frets all the time. So it took a while, and even after 5 months up there, I still wasn't as precise and clean at playing guitar as I am on Earth. I made a bunch of recordings up there. I did Space Oddity, as you mentioned, but I wrote a lot of music up there, and I have an album coming out in October. And even listening to my guitar playing there now, it's kind of messy, but it's the best I could do given the circumstances. You need maybe to redesign a guitar a little bit if you want to have a weightless or a space guitar. But if you never challenge yourself, if you're never doing something hard, then you can just sort of, take your chances, and count on instinct. But if you want to do something difficult, like drive a car, or write a test on a really complicated subject, or scuba dive, or fly an airplane, or fly a rocket ship, or do a spacewalk, all of those things have a risk, and they're complicated. And if you just rely on your instinct, you're probably not going to do very well. And some of them, like scuba diving or driving a car, if you haven't prepared properly, it doesn't just have a risk for you, but it's a life and death risk, and a risk for other people as well. So some things you really want to get ready for. And I've done all of those things in my life. And every single one of them, I tried to understand, why am I doing this? Why would I scuba dive? Why take a risk? Well, it's magnificent. You can see the coral. You can see fish you've never seen. You can understand, 3/4 of the world's surface better. So it's worth taking the risk, but then prepare. What are the dangers? What are the skills that I need to have? How do I clear my mask? What do I do with a snorkel? How does a regulator work? How do you know when your tank's getting empty? What do you do if you lose a fin? You learn all those things. And then you just go into a safe place, like a swimming pool, and practice over and over and over and over again until you now have a new set of skills. And then you go do your first open water dive, and you're a little bit nervous, and you try to put all those lessons together. But you do okay, pass. But then suddenly, you can see a whole part of the world, a whole part of the universe that you've never seen before, because of the way that you've changed yourself and gotten ready for it. And that applies to everything. It applies to driving a car, it applies to driving a spaceship, and it applies to putting on a spacesuit and going outside on a spacewalk. And to me, It's the whole essence of life. Dream about something, learn about it, study it, understand it, practice it over and over and over again, and then go do it, and then become a more capable human being as a result. I've done that my whole life, and I just love the process, and I think it's given me some chances and perspectives that have changed who I am.
On Earth?
Let's pretend that this coffee cup is a spaceship, and you've been floating weightless through space, but it's time to return to the Earth. And you don't have enough fuel just to be able to fly all the way down and land on Earth. You don't have nearly enough gas for that. You'd have to bring so much fuel with you, you could never get off the ground. So instead, we carry just enough fuel in our spaceship to slow down a tiny bit, so that instead of our orbit around the world being a perfect circle, it becomes more like an oval or an ellipse, and the low part of the orbit starts to touch the atmosphere. So the bottom of your spaceship starts to touch the atmosphere. And then it's like sticking your hand out the window of your car, where if you touch the atmosphere, you have this tremendous amount of drag. And so your spaceship starts to get dragged and slowed down and pulled down, almost like if you stick your hand into a moving stream of water and it kind of pulls you into the water. Same thing, you get pulled down into the atmosphere, and every second slows you down more, and there's a huge amount of pressure and friction around your spaceship, as if you were a meteorite or a shooting star plummeting, and you're going fast. You're going 25 times the speed of sound, or 8 kilometers a second, or 17,500 miles an hour. So you're coming in incredibly fast, and the atmosphere flames all around your ship like this big glowing blast furnace around your spaceship, and you're inside, flying your spaceship through the atmosphere on the way home. And because of the deceleration, it's kind of brutal. You imagine if you're in the bottom of this spaceship, you're squished down into the bottom, like crushed against the floor with your back on the floor as it slows down, just as if you were flying a meteorite back to Earth. And it takes several minutes from the time you first fired your little engines to slow down a little bit until your parachute opens and you land back on Earth. It takes about an hour. But in that time, you slow down from 28,000 kilometers an hour down to nothing. And so it's brutal, it's heavy, it's hot, it squishes you into the floor. The impact with the ground is rough and heavy, and you tumble and tip. But it's the only way we can safely fly in space. And even though it's a bit of an abrupt return, it is nothing compared to the magnificence of the space flight itself, and the chance to see the entire world so many times, and to leave the planet and be one of the first people to see the start of everything else. To get used to what you see every day. You know, it's just normal, right? You get used to your home, whatever it is, apartment or house. You get used to your neighborhood and the people you see, and the particular set of rules of that place. And you start to think that that's the only way to live, or that's the whole world. Or, you know, there's 7.5 billion people, but we only know a few hundred. But we start to think that maybe all 7.5 billion are just the same as the few hundred, or the particular religion and culture and laws of our little square of the world. We start to think that maybe the whole world's like that. And of course it isn't. There's an immense variety to it. And some things in some parts of the world are worse, but a lot of things in other parts of the world are better. They found a better way to do things. They have a different perspective, a different history, a different language, different culture that is richer, more interesting, varied, much more perspective, more historic than your own. And if you never break out of the little mold of where you are, then you won't be able to appreciate the enormity of life. You won't push your own mind to the limits that are available for yourself. To be an astronaut, to train all over the world, but then to leave the world and to go around the world every 92 minutes. I've been around the world 2,597 times. I understand the enormity of our planet, the age of it, the variety of it, the toughness of it, the fragility of it, and the unique rarity of it. And all of that is part of who I am now. And so when I go back to where I'm from, like sitting where I am today, I have a better appreciation for where I am. I have it better in context. Like when you're doing a huge jigsaw puzzle and you find the little piece that you're holding in your hand doesn't look like much. Mm-hmm. But when you put it into the puzzle, you suddenly see a much more complete picture and how that piece fits in. And so I feel more responsible for the world. I feel more like a crew member on board a big ship with a big crew. And so I want to do my part to be a good member of that crew. I want to tidy it up. You know, why would I pollute it if I have a choice? Why would I leave it messy? Why would I not want to take care of it? And I think that perspective is a really important one. And it's why I work so hard to try and let people see what it's like. That's why I did a whole book of photography of the world. Because you shouldn't count on someone else to tell you about the world. You should see it for yourself. So I just took pictures. This is what the world looks like. I didn't tell people what to think. I just want them to actually see the world and start expanding their own horizons so that hopefully they'll maybe make better decisions, but also they'll understand the completeness of the world a little more clearly.